studying Torah that helps a person stronger and overcome whatever spiritual challenges there are, why does it have to be the hidden secrets of Torah? Why can't it just be Torah in general? Because after all, throughout all the generations in history, that's what it was. People studied Torah. That gave them strength. That gave them, inspired them to have good character traits. Everything that we say Chassidus does, apparently that's what happened years ago. So the answer is, this is a short version because it needs much more time. We actually have a class later in the year, which is called the Chassidic Way of Life, where we go into all these questions in detail. But at this point, we'll just be more general. So the general answer is that the fact that Yidden have the strength within themselves to learn Torah, to do mitzvahs, to stand up to the challenges, not ordinary challenges we have in an entire world of millions of people. Today there are billions of people, and they're all going in a different direction than we are. And yet, to have the strength to go against that tide, against the current, to go against all the challenges where there are actually more direct challenges, things that are very difficult, and they challenge our emunah in Hashem. They make it difficult to do certain mitzvahs. The strength to do this, not just because we're smart, or we're very honest, or we're very committed, that's also true, but it all comes from something deeper. And the deeper is, we have a Neshama, and the Neshama is chelik of the Kami Mal Mamish, it's part of Hashem. And the fact that we have this Neshama, which is bursting with godly love and devotion and dedication and loyalty and strength, that is what enables us to do all the things that we're doing. That's the way it is throughout all of history. And in terms of that, that's where the change took place. In other words, how does Hashem's presence shine in this world? And that inspires me, you, and every single person on the planet. And the answer is in Chumash. Abisha says, in order to have my presence here on earth, is by building me a Beis HaMikdash. So it started with a Mishkan in the desert, and then later there was another Mishkan when they crossed Israel. Built the Mishkan Shila, which stood for 369 years, and a few little ones, temporary ones. And then eventually it was the first Beis HaMikdash, the second Beis HaMikdash. So we understand that the Beis HaMikdash is not only a place that in this house Hashem's presence dwells, but the Beis HaMikdash is a place that through the Beis HaMikdash, Hashem's presence is sort of generated to every single place in the world, all four corners of the world. So the fact that a Yid, wherever he is, could be inspired to love Hashem, to believe in Hashem, to have fear in Hashem, and to have the true deep inspiration, that comes from the Neshama, and the Neshama is strengthened, and that's generated by Hashem Shechina in this world. If you want to learn more about this, it's in chapter 51 in Tanya, where you can use the analogy of the brain. Sometimes we use the analogy of the heart, but it's all the same. The brain and the heart are two organs of the body that are there functioning properly and healthy. They give strength and health and energy to the entire body. The Beis HaMikdash is the brain and the heart of the universe. And that's where Hashem's presence is found. And from there, it spreads to the whole world. So therefore, once the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, and we're constantly mourning the Beis HaMikdash, we have Tisha B'Av, we have the 3 weeks. The mourning of the Beis HaMikdash is not just, we can't anymore bring a carbon, we can't anymore light the menorah, we can't anymore do the ketores, the incense, we don't see the Kohanim, it was so beautiful, that's all true. But it's much deeper than that. What happened was that the life and source of life in this world was taken away from us. That the Shekhinah of Hashem, which dwells in this world through the Beis HaMikdash, is no longer here because no longer Beis HaMikdash. So like in a person's body, if chas v'shalom, these two vital organs were missing, the brain and the heart, it's not just that we don't have the ability to benefit from the intellectual activity or the emotional activity, it's much deeper than that. The Neshama, a person can't live.
Isn't it just hidden? It is here, but it's hidden.
I'll get there in a moment. But on the other hand, we can't say that Hashem's presence is not here, because without Hashem's presence, it wouldn't be a world altogether. So when we say Hashem dwells in the Beis Hamikdash, the word dwells means revealed, in a more revealed way. And we spoke about this earlier, that this is why we use the mashal, that Galus is like sleeping, because when a person sleeps, he has a neshama, he's technically alive, but in the chayas, the life force is hidden, is unconscious, and therefore he doesn't function the way he functions when he's awake. He doesn't hear, doesn't see, doesn't walk, and doesn't do all the other things that a person does when he's awake. So this is what happened when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. However, the first generation after the destruction, even though Hashem's light left this world, but still it did leave a tremendous, powerful impact on the world, that there's still some remnants of that light, and that gave the Yidden the strength to be at a certain spiritual plane. And for this is another mashal given by one of the Hasidic rabbis, Pinchas Koritzer. He gave a mashal of a person who's in a horse and wagon, and he's sitting in the middle of the town. It's at night, but the streets are lit up. They're lit up because there are street lamps, and they're lit up because there are homes that there's light in the homes, and the light from the homes shine out into the streets. So the streets are lit up. But when he goes out of the town, out on the road, it starts getting darker, but there's still some light, and the light is shining from the city that he just left. So he left the city, but the city has so much light that it shines light onto the road. And when he moves a little bit further, he travels another few yards, it gets darker, but there's still some light lingering. And basically, as he moves on and on and on, it gets darker and darker and darker until it reaches a point where it's pitch black, there's no longer any light, because it's so far away from the original city that the light of the city no longer reaches the spot where it is. So every generation, post-Churban, Beis Hamikdash, the light of Hashem became darker than the generation before. And when we say darker, it doesn't mean that people therefore didn't learn Torah, do mitzvahs, but it meant that awareness and consciousness of Hashem's presence in a revealed way. And therefore people would feel this love for Hashem, just a godly love, a godly fear. I'm not talking about fear of punishment, but the fear of Hashem and awe of Hashem and love for Hashem and a deep amun in Hashem. These are things that as the generations progressed, it became weaker and weaker because Hashem's presence was hidden. What happened in the times of the Arizal, then later intensified more in the times of Baal Shem Tov, when we use the mashal that the child became sick, it means that the darkness of Galus became so intense, so challenging, that something stronger was needed in order to give the Yidden strength to overcome and stand up against all these challenges. And the reason is because at that point, there was so many more, I'm not sure what the number is, 15, 20 generations from the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. And being that it was so many generations further from the Beis Hamikdash being destroyed, the darkness was just much more intense. So the condition of the Jewish people then was not the same as the condition 100, 200, 500, 600 years earlier. In fact, the Gemara was completed 1,500 years ago. And the Rambam writes that from the time Hashem gave the Torah in Har Sinai until the Gemara was completed is exactly 40 generations. And he gives the names of each one of the sages that was the leader of that generation. And what was unique about all the people of Gemara? They all had smicha, which means they were ordained to be the rabbis that they were, by a rabbi of a previous generation, who was ordained by a rabbi of a previous generation, all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu. That means, in a sense, each and every one of them had the authority given to them by Moshe Rabbeinu, because he ordained this rabbi, he ordained his students, student ordained the next student, and that's until the Gemara was finished. After that, we know, I guess there might be individuals, selected people, but generally speaking, we don't have people that have that kind of smicha that goes directly back to Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Torah scholars are just not what they used to be. And that means that godly light is not shining brightly like it used to be. And as a result, we're so much more weaker, more vulnerable to all the challenges of Golos. So then the question is, why Chassidus? And the other question is, so how did they manage in earlier generations? And the answer is, the Gemara says, from the day that Beis Mikdash was destroyed, Hashem's place is in the Daled Amas of Halacha, which means it's in the Torah. Not that it wasn't there before, but that's where we're looking for it, which means when you study Torah, that contains Hashem's Shekhinah in it. You absorb that, you're absorbing Hashem's Shekhinah. And that gives you the strength to daven, to learn, and to do everything the way it's supposed to. But again, as a result of going deeper and deeper, descending into the darkness of Golos, two things happen. Number one, that the godly light that is in Torah is more concealed than it used to be. Which means, years ago, if a person studied Gemara, and the Gemara was not about Hashem, the Gemara was about how, what's considered okay to plant in a field, and what's not okay to plant in a field. When is it considered kalayim, or when is it not considered kalayim? Has nothing to do with love and fear of Hashem. Guess what? After he finished learning the Gemara, he was on fire with love and fear of Hashem. How did that happen? He's learning about animals, about goats, about behemoths, about fields. He's learning about food, learning about two people fighting over who this belongs to. One is lying, one is saying the truth. Laws about marriage, laws about divorce. How does that have anything to do with feeling love and fear of Hashem? How did people get their refined midas? They didn't study so much something that directly deals with midas. And the answer is, but they studied Torah. Torah is chachmasa u'ritzonah shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem's wisdom and Hashem's presence is in the Torah. And by them learning Torah and absorbing Torah, they became filled with godliness, and automatically that gave them all these godly feelings that they had. That's what elevated them, that gave them the strength. But each generation, as the darkness of Golos became worse, it also affected Torah. That the light of Hashem, which is normally shining in Torah, is no longer shining in such an open way. It's more concealed, it's hidden. It's like taking a bright bulb that gives off 150, 200, 300, 500 watts, and you cover it with a dark covering, and then you cover another dark covering, and then every generation was another dark covering, and it comes to a point where you don't feel it anymore.
Why?
Why?
Why is that? Because the light, the Shekhinah is eternal. Why would it get weaker? Is it the generation? Like,
No, why is the Shekhinah getting weaker? So we're saying because the Shekhinah in this world comes through the Beis Hamikdash. From the Beis Hamikdash, it gets weaker and weaker, like the mashal with the city. That's our source of light. Hashem sends His light into the world through the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, the fact that we feel inspiration when we do a mitzvah, we feel inspiration when we study Torah, that's when Hashem's light is more revealed. And the same is with our Neshama. Our Neshama is sensitive to godliness. So therefore, when I learn Torah, I become inspired. But what happens if the godliness in my Neshama becomes concealed and hidden and covered up with some a whole array of coverings? So I don't feel it. So basically, both from my end and from the end of Torah, everything is concealed and everything is covered, and it's very hard to feel and sense godliness. So the academic part of Torah didn't change. Questions and answers, and it's brilliant and it's beautiful and it's deep. That part of it is there. That's the exterior, that's the skeleton. But the neshama in Torah, which is the godly presence in Torah, all that is hidden. And from my end, even the little bit that's revealed, I'm less sensitive because my neshama has coverings over it, is not as revealed as it used to be. So as a result of that, the challenges of Golus are so much more deeper. Yeah.
So it's not only concealed by a human being, it's also concealed from like.
Once again, what'd you say?
I don't know. It's concealed. You know what I mean? Like it's not only concealed from a human being, but it's also concealed from the Torah.
Right. Not it's concealed within us, that we don't feel our neshama, and the godliness in Torah itself is more concealed than it used to be.
Only because it's concealed from us, though.
No.
Oh, really?
It's like saying that I can't see clearly what's in the room, and there could be two reasons. One reason because the person has a problem with his eyesight. He has a condition that he can't see clearly. And the other reason is someone covered it up. So it's basically double covered from that end and covered from my end. So number one, my neshama is not so revealed, so it's not so sensitive. And on the other hand, the godliness in Torah is not so revealed, so it's harder for me to sense that also. And as a result of that, it leads to a person not having much harder time to develop love and fear of Hashem, and to feel very strongly in a very conscious way an awareness of Hashem's presence. And therefore, it was time for something to happen, a certain remedy. What was the remedy? The remedy was that the hidden secrets of Torah should be revealed, which means like this, again, just in a very general way, that Torah in general stimulates the godliness of my neshama. I mean, think of it this way, even in very gashmis, even today, when a person goes to Israel and goes to the Kotel and gets all excited about Yiddishkeit, how? It's not an intellectual process. It's not something philosophical. They're standing by the wall and they're getting inspired. A wall. So the answer is there's something in that wall that's inspiring. It's not the stones. What's in the wall? The Shechina. Shechina le'zazim and It says the Shechina never left the kislev maravi. So if a Yid who has an neshama comes in the presence of Shechina, so really every Jew that walks over to the kislev, there should be boom, an explosion. That doesn't happen either. Why? Because not everybody's neshama is so open, so sensitive. We all have things that sometimes cover up our neshama. But those hundreds of people, I would say maybe even thousands of people, that will tell you and wrote stories how they came to the Kotel and they became inspired to make moves towards getting closer to Yiddishkeit. It's simply because the Shekhinah is there. So if the Shekhinah is in stones and that can inspire me, how much more the Shekhinah that's in Torah. So the godliness in Torah reveals the godliness in my neshama. But being that in Torah there are two parts, there's the hidden part of Torah and the revealed part of the Torah, Nigla, and then there's the secrets of Torah. So too in the neshama, there's the revealed part of my neshama, and there's the hidden part of my neshama. When you study the revealed part of Torah, it opens up, and it brings out more openly the revealed part of my neshama. But when the darkness is so dark, and that's not strong enough, we have to reveal the deeper part of the neshama. And how is that revealed? Through the deeper part of Torah. So basically, the pneumius of Torah arouses and helps bring out the pneumius of the neshama. And the external part of Torah reveals the external part of the neshama. So years ago, when everything was so bright and light and it wasn't necessary to go into the deeper part of Torah. That's why, in fact, it was hidden. But now, the deeper part of Torah is necessary to reveal the deeper part of the neshama. That's the part of the neshama that has this unconditional love, and there's nothing in the world that can stand in its way. And that's what needs to be revealed in the presence of the challenges we stand up to the end of Golus. So that's the general idea behind the mashal of the crown jewel of the king. In fact, the word Tanya is the first word of the Sefer, and it became the name of the Sefer. And it's interesting, with all that, there are actually two opinions, whether this Gemara that the Alter Rebbe brings, what this statement is in a Brisa or a Mishnah. If you learn this when you study Gemara, when the Gemara says Tanan, that means they're quoting a Mishnah. When the Gemara says Tanya, it means it's quoting a Brisa. The Brisa was written by scholars which were a little bit in a later generation than the Mishnah. They wrote the Brisa. So here it says Tanya, but actually there are opinions that it was a Mishnah that should say Tanan. Now, the Rebbe chose Tanya, so there's a lot of explanations. What is it in the word Tanya? But one of the things that the Rebbe said, that Tzemach Tzedek said, was that Tanya, if you rearrange the letters, spells the word Asan. Asan means strong, hard, ancient. These are three translations of the word Asan. And you find it in Chumash by Egla Rufa. And it means, what it's referring to is the Yechida of the Neshama, the deepest part of the Neshama, which is called Yechida, but another sort of code word for the Yechida is Asan. And that's why Tanya starts with this word to indicate that by learning this part of Torah, we arouse and we develop and we generate the Asan of our Neshama to be more revealed. So basically, when people say, you know, I really didn't feel such excitement by Yiddishkeit, I wasn't so inspired, I started to study Chassidus, wow, it opened up a whole new world, and I'm much more inspired than it ever was. There can be two reasons for that. One is a technical reason. Simply when you learn Chassidus, you have a deeper understanding of what happens when you keep Shabbos, a deeper understanding of what happens when you observe mitzvahs, a deeper understanding of what Torah is really all about, what Yontiv is all about. And when you have a deeper understanding, you're more inspired. But the deeper reason is, it's something beyond that. In addition to that, that because this is the deeper part of Torah, it opens up a hidden compartment in me, the deeper part of my neshama, and that's the inspiration that I'm feeling.
Tanya is Aramaic.
The word, yeah. One of the simonim to recognize that if a word is Aramaic or it's Hebrew is if the last letter is an aleph, it's usually Aramaic. The last letter is a hey, it's usually Hebrew. In Russia, they love to give the kids the name Tanya.
Tanya, yeah.
It's also a future, letters of the future tense.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay.
Stuff.
So, on the other hand, there was a kitchum. We said there was a up in the mind of Shemayim, there was opposition against spreading Chassidus, the way the Alter Rebbe did. And why were they saying this opposition? Because this is the crown jewel of the king. This is the deepest part of Torah. And how could you reveal this to people that are not on the level? Imagine if early generations, people weren't worthy to have it. How much more so in the lower generations? So therefore there were two, just like in Gemara, there's Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, there's Rava, there's Abaya, there's Rav, and there's Shmuel. Each one has their opinion. In the heavenly court, there were two opinions. One opinion is that under no circumstance could we reveal these deep secrets of Torah. People aren't on the level that they are worthy to learn this part of Torah. I mean, imagine like there's a halacha, and it's one of the very strictest halacha, that a person who is impure, tamei, is not allowed to walk into the Beis Hamikdash. And if they do, it's a very severe punishment. A person who's tamei is not allowed to even eat the meat of a korban, because if they do, there's a very severe punishment. What's the reason? Because this is such a high level of kedusha. This person is tamei, and it's inappropriate. It's a fact that it's a disgrace to take something of kedusha and bring it to something or a person or a place that's impure. So if a person is not purified enough to learn the deepest part of Torah, they shouldn't go near it. So that's why there was opposition. And the Alter Rebbe was going by the opinion that it's true, but being that we're talking about saving the life of the king's one and only child, then we go ahead and we do it. So that's why there was opposition. And the Alter Rebbe was in jail exactly for 53 days. And the reason was because the Chassidus that he revealed was through Tanya. Tanya has 53 chapters. So in a sense, for every chapter of Tanya, he sat another day in jail. So this could also be understood in two ways. One way is, well, being that there was a prosecution going against him, so he was punished 53 chapters, 53 days. But on a deeper level, the whole idea of going through what he went through and going to jail was only to break through certain barriers in order to reveal Chassidus. And the Rebbe Rashab once said, and the Gemara says this in reference to the Jewish people, that we're compared to many different things. One of the things Jews are compared to is a zayis, an olive. An olive has something very precious in it. It's called oil. But how do you get the oil? You have to squeeze it. And when you squeeze it, the oil comes out. So the Indian that he didn't go to Gullus is the ultimate. This is the same way, the same thing, but in different words. Well, we always say that the Gullus is ultimately to bring us to a higher level and to bring out more of our potential. So just like an olive, by squeezing it, you bring out the oil, and the only way you can bring it out. The same thing is with the Alter Rebbe. So in a sense, for every day of that he had to reveal, every chapter of Tanya, there was a day in jail, meaning to say he went through a process of concealment in order to bring a higher level of revealment of Chassidus. So,
I mean, in prison then was in concealment because he couldn't teach Torah?
because his life was in danger, not just couldn't teach Torah. They wanted to Chas v'Shalom execute him. Okay, so I mentioned briefly that after Alter Rebbe went to jail was a big celebration, and Chassidim were doing somersaults in the streets, and you can imagine the simcha that there was. But we're going to learn tomorrow a letter from the Alter Rebbe where he warned the Chassidim not to in any way tease those other Yidden, because Alter Rebbe went with the other direction. If anything, show them your love and teach them Chassidus, and you'll see that they'll be inspired. Everything comes mainly from misunderstanding and from lack of knowledge, and so on and so forth. So after all that, and after all the joy, and after all the celebration, 2 years later, they did it again, and Alter Rebbe was arrested a second time. And it's interesting that it was the same time of the year. It was right after Sukkot. Alter Rebbe got arrested, and Alter Rebbe sat in jail almost the same amount of time. But he came home, but he would get out of jail on Hanukkah. It's interesting, even this time when Alter Rebbe was arrested, but it took time to get home. And when did he get home? He got home on Hanukkah. In other words, in terms of halacha, when a person goes through a danger and his life is saved, he's supposed to make a bracha of hagoimel. So if a person's in jail, when does he make the bracha hagoimel? Not when he gets out of the jail, but when he gets back home. So when did Alter Rebbe get back home? Which means when was the completion of his release from jail was actually also on Hanukkah. So then you have Maimorim and Sichos, all about the connection between Hanukkah and Yitzchak Kislev. What stands out sort of the most of all is a famous pamphlet. It's a Sicha that the Rebbe once wrote. It's one of the first things that were translated in English. It's called Inyaner Shel Teres Chassidus. In English, it's called On the Essence of Chassidus. It's all about explaining how Chassidus and oil are one and the same thing. What's so unique about oil, and therefore oil, which is Hanukkah and Chassidus, they're very much connected. So when the Alter Rebbe was in jail the second time, it was pretty much different than the first in the sense that Alter Rebbe was treated in a much better way in terms of the way he was, and it wasn't like the first time where he went with guards that were armed in his black coach as if he's a rebel. But it does say that in some ways the second time, the kitrug, maybe it means the kitrug and Shemayim was worse than the first. The first time was more of a kitrug against Chassidus. The second time was specifically against the Alter Rebbe himself. And his life was in danger. But generally speaking, after Alter Rebbe went out of jail, one of the things that changed was that thousands of people, when they saw that those who were in the opposition went that far to go inform the government, they became aware that a lot of the things were false. A lot of the things, in other words, you have to understand, remember I said in the beginning that whenever there's a controversy, those two types of people. There's certain people that are Yerushalayim, God-fearing, and they mean it wholeheartedly, but they just have the wrong information. So unfortunately, they're fighting something because they were misinformed. Then you have people who actually love a controversy, and they enjoyed the fire, and they poured oil on the fire, they poured kerosene on the fire. And some of these people did things which were actually false, and they did it in order to make things even worse. Like the story that I told you, that they falsified things in Tanya. Or another story, which is a famous story. It's not just a little Maisala. This is a true story, which is recorded, that at one point, there was an announcement that came from the city of Vilna, and it came from the Bezdin of the Vilna Gaon himself against Chassidim, a very sharp statement, how to sort of go out against the Chassidim. And what was it based on? That someone came to the Bezdin and he testified as a witness, maybe more than one person, that they saw with their own eyes that the Chassidim were eating and drinking on Tisha B'Av. And we all know that this is one of the things that Shabsai Tzvi did. So clearly they're followers of that movement. And they testified in front of a Bezdin that this is true. And later it was discovered that what were they talking about? It was actually true. They weren't lying. They just left out a detail that when they saw that, Tisha B'Av was on Shabbos. On Shabbos, you're allowed to eat, and you're mechuyev to eat and drink. There was Maisa Satan here that from above, these are the kind of things that happen. So I'll just conclude with giving you one example that what was happening at that time, how the Alter Rebbe brought so many people to Chassidus was, he sent, that people think that Shlichus began today. Shlichus began in the time of the Alter Rebbe. He sent Shluchim to different cities in Lithuania. They didn't openly identify as Chassidim. They were brilliant Torah scholars. They were people who knew Gan Shas and very deep. And they would meet with the Lithuanian Jews who were very much into learning the Torah. And they would establish a relationship. And then slowly they would introduce them to a Hasidic thought, one thing, a second thing, a third thing. And eventually they got the cat came out of the sack, and they'd start to talk to them about Chassidus. And through that, hundreds of men, brilliant Torah scholars, became attracted to Chassidus. And the Friedrich Rebbe tells a story about a certain specific individual. His name was Meir Rafal, Shleimer Rafal, that was his name. And this person was one of the most respected people in all of Lithuania, a big goy, and he was very wealthy. He had a large family, and he spent his wealth on the war against Chassidim. He mobilized all his family, children, grandchildren, sons, daughters-in-law, sons-in-law, everybody was involved in one way or another with the war against Chassidim. He was one of the main people that was involved in the announcements of excommunication against the Baal Shem Tov. And after so many people became Chassidim, after Alter Rebbe went out of jail, some of them were actually his own grandchildren. But the Friedrich Rebbe tells the following story. He lived in a city called Shrinzion. Shrinzion was in Lithuania, and amongst the different cities, it was one of the most extreme in terms of the war against Chassidus, and probably because of him. Nevertheless, at one point, he stopped everything, all his activities against Chassidim. And all the people who were involved in these activities sent a committee to him to find out why did he stop. But he wouldn't tell them. And after a while, he was there for a few days, inquiring and talking and discussing. Finally, they said to him, is it possible to just stop because you found out that the Chassidim are really from Jews? They said, that's not even a question. but he still didn't tell them what happened, what prompted him to stop. And no one ever knew. When the Alter Rebbe came to this, when the Alter Rebbe sent out his young men all over, at one point they said that the Lithuania in this region, people are craving to learn Chassidus. And the Alter Rebbe himself would come, and they would see the Alter Rebbe's greatness in Torah in general. And here's the Alter Rebbe questions that guaranteed that hundreds of people would be attracted and would be embracing Chassidus. So Alter Rebbe agreed to come. And where did he go to? Actually, this city, Shunzion. He was there for 3 Shabbosim. And all through this time, people came to him with different questions in their learning. And Alter Rebbe answered their questions about Chassidus. And yes, that's exactly what happened. Hundreds of people became inspired to follow Chassidus. This person, this Reb Shlomo Rafal, the last Shabbos, Alter Rebbe was there. He davened in his shul where he was. At this point, he was older. He was 93 years old. And it was in the shul. The Alter Rebbe gave over words of Torah in the shul.
Who's 92, the Alter Rebbe?
No, this Reb Shlomo Rafal. And he himself met with the Alter Rebbe, asked him questions that he had in learning. He was very, very excited and inspired by the Alter Rebbe's greatness in Torah. Shabbos, after davening, he walks over to the shulchan, gave a patch on the table and said, I want to say a few words, but I'm an older person. It's hard for me to speak. I'm asking everybody to be totally quiet so I can speak. It was very unusual, so people really were tuned in. And he said like this. Start off with the words from Chumash, actually, in these parshas. I, for many years, about 30 years ago, was very involved in all the meetings and all the activities against the Baal Shem Tov. And I'm standing here in the shul, in front of the Aron Kodesh, and I'm going to tell you that whatever I did was totally and purely and completely the Shem Shemayim. I had no other agendas. In other words, in my mind, this was the right thing to do for Hashem. And for 7 consecutive years, I was all the way at the top of all the activity, the helm of everything that was going on. One day, it was my 70th birthday, and I was sitting and learning Gemara Menachos. Uncontrollable sleep came upon me. I just fell asleep. I couldn't keep myself awake. And in my sleep, I see a face of someone, and he says to me, I am the Baal Shem Tov. I am the one that you and your other colleagues, the Ge'onim, announced a excommunication against me. In halacha, it says before you announce an excommunication, you have to research it, and you have to examine it and search and research 7 times, very intense search before you can come out with such an announcement. Did you do that? You didn't, and that's against halacha. And he disappeared. So he said, I woke up and I was thinking to myself, he's right. We never did that. We never did the proper research. I started to do the research and I realized that it was a big mistake. The Chassidim are from Yidden, Yerushalayim, they have a different approach, but not what I thought it was. And from that point on, I stopped everything. And especially, there was one of the people that became a chassid in his city. He was called Rabbi Yosef Kolbein. The word Kolbein in Hebrew means that he has everything. He had vast knowledge of Torah. There was nothing that he didn't know. No, and he became a chassid. So when he saw that he became a chassid again, spoke to him more, and he found out more. And then he said like this. Again, I'm standing in the shul in front of Aron Kodesh, and I'm saying this with all my heart and soul. And he made a bracha. That I have the schus to see face to face the Alter Rebbe, who brought tens and thousands of people to be closer to Hashem through his teachings. And after this, hundreds of more people became a Chassidim because he was like one of the most respected people. But clearly, it became clear to them that this is the kind of situation that people did not know, people had the wrong impression. And when they found out, they turned around. And that was the Alter Rebbe Shita, not fighting and not arguing, just get to a place where you can speak to a person, tell them what Chassidus is, let them learn Chassidus, and through that, they become inspired. Okay, to be continued. So today is the last day of the year, the Chassidish year. And if you look at Tanya, it says that at the end of the Moira Shir, it says that today we wish each other, because it's a Rosh Hashanah, the Chassidus. Tomorrow we'll learn the letter, all about it, what it means. We wish each other L'Shana Teva, B'lim Chassidus, the B'darkei Chassidus, to Gasev V'Sechasevim. Everybody should have a successful year in learning Chassidus and succeed in living in the path of Chassidus.